And welcome back to day 13 of Survivor 46 and 46. Just finished watching Cook Islands, which was a lot better than I thought it would be on this rewatch. I'm going to get to that in a second. Today we're joined once again by McKenna from The Specialist. And for the first time, Phil, also from The Specialist. Phil, going right into it. First of all, thank you for joining us today. Going right into it, your first experience with Cook Islands. Has your opinion of the season changed? Because I want to talk about this perception that Cook Islands might be a tad overrated.
Oh, yeah. So thanks first for having me. I'm super pumped to be here. It really lined up. I think, Drew, you're crazy for doing this as often as you do. It's absolutely mind-blowing. As somebody who loves Survivor, I couldn't even fathom doing what you're doing. And I've burned through seasons, man. I've done it, but never to the level that you're doing it. Your eyes are going to be bleeding. But my wife and I just watched Cook Islands over Memorial Day weekend, so it was fresh in my head, and we ripped through it fast. The pre-merge of Cook Islands is bad. There is no other word to say other than it is bad. But the moment that Candace and Jonathan mutiny, the season becomes incredible. And it's just a matter of, do you have the beginning outweigh the end? And of course, yeah, talk about the race season. Here we go. I can't wait. But I just find this used to be like a top 10 season for me. Now, granted, we're talking back during like 25, 26. How many seasons? We had 26 seasons. It's, now there's so many. I ranked them, and my wife and I have been going through, and I can share this here so you can all feel like you're getting some insider knowledge here. I have 13 ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th out of the first 13 seasons of Survivor. And it used to be in my top 10. So I think it does a massive drop, even if there's some amazing storylines. It's just the pre-merge is horrible, and they didn't know how to edit 20 people.
They didn't, and we're going to talk all about the 20 people of it as we progress through this. McKenna, I know that this is very high on your list. When we did 42 and 42, you came on for it that time. Mm-hmm. I'm going to assume that it hasn't dropped in the last 2 years. So what is it about Cook Islands that continues, besides Parvati? Because I know, I know what you're ready to point to. Besides Parvati, what is it about this season? Because Parvati isn't the main character, or she's there, and I think that she does get a lot more content as as the Railroad Tribe starts to get taken out. But besides Parvati, what are some of these things that keeps Cook Island so high on your list?
We have so many returnees coming from Cook Islands where this might not be their best season, but it gives us so many great people to return from it. And I don't know, the pre-merge can be a slog, but I love some of those interactions and some of those moments of the bad wind and playing voodoo and all of that. It has a bunch, it's very character driven, and it might not be heavy in strategy aside from Yule. It just is very fun to watch for me. I love Cook Islands. I think I always say it's my favorite non-returnee season because I'm basic and heroes versus villains.
I mean, yeah, and we'll get to that. I will say that I watched Cook Islands when it first aired. I watched it during COVID, and I watched it during 42 and 42. And at that point, it started to slip down my list. Only because, and it runs into the Palau problem of once you get past, I've seen a tribe get decimated before. I really don't want to watch Oolong lose every single time now. It becomes boring. With this, I felt like the last time I watched it, the I-24 storyline was okay, yeah, it's cool, but I don't care. And I will say that this time, I actually got invested again. I actually got invested in that storyline, thankfully, because once the merge hits, it's a very easy watch. Pre-merge, I will say the best thing the pre-merge has going for it, besides Cowboy, are the challenges. The challenges are actually pretty cool this season. I enjoyed most of them. I enjoyed the scenery of both Tribal Council and the urn that we were given this season. But a lot of these people are very forgettable. The fact that we have, Rebecca and a few others on that early part of the jury, it's like they don't need to be here. Like we could have had a regular jury, or they could have merged to at least give people interactions, because I think, oh my goodness,
Brad never met Ozzy.
Brad never met Ozzy. Yeah, Brad never met Ozzy. And so Brad was probably never going to vote Ozzy. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, actually, they did meet when Cowboy, Ozzy, and
showed up.
Brad obviously wasn't going to talk to Ozzy during that. And this is the one thing, and sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is a massive problem of this era of Survivor, is when they start having people who never actually make the merge or play with other players make the jury. It is so ridiculous. I hate it. And I mean, we see it in Heroes versus Villains, but obviously Courtney and Coach knew who everybody was. Yeah. But I mean, I'm watching Fiji right now, and it really does bother me with those first two people who make the jury. I don't want my wife to overhear it. She's in the other room. But, with those first two people who make the jury, it's like they don't play with anybody from Moto, barely anybody from Moto. It's silly. It's nonsense. And I don't know, that really does bother me.
And we're still at this phase of Survivor where they are still trying to test new things. It's very similar to the 40s, where they're just like, all right, in this season, we're going to do this. And thankfully, this is the last time that we get the retconned Tyler Perry idol until Cagayan. And that's the main story. Like, one of the main storylines of the merge is the fact that, like Terry last season, Yul pretty much has he's kidnapped everyone. Like everyone is on lockdown. They can't target him. And I do think that Yul's a great strategist, or one of the best and all that. But I do feel like the fact that he has this all powerful idol is it keeps people from making moves that. The Railroad Tribe was never going to do anything crazy. They were convinced that he didn't even have the idol until Jonathan just goes off on him about it. McKenna, because this is our last time with the retcon Tyler Perry idol, do you feel like there's merit to Yul's win outside of him having that?
Yes, I feel like it was used as a tool for him to get Jonathan over, and then he did a little jury management with Jonathan's hat. Then he also voted out Jonathan before Parvati and Adam, so that would curry favor with them once they're on the jury, because they know that they're heading toward the jury. But it's like, if you want my vote, then you'll vote me out before after Jonathan. So I think he was making moves that did solidify him strategically, plus his alliance with Becky. I think he needed a right hand to help him move forward that wasn't as big of a voice than he was, so he could take credit, or it's perceived that he had all the credit for moves that they might have made together.
Yeah, and the craziest thing about this jury is that because we know that this season is very recruit heavy, and we'll talk about that, it does seem like a lot of people put stock into the challenges. And before we went live, I brought up to Phil, I'm surprised that Candace and Adam voted for Yul in the situation, because I felt like they gave off the challenges are what matters. Phil, why do you think that happened? Specifically with Adam.
Adam votes for Yul because Yul voted out Jonathan before Adam. I think that's 100% the reason. Parvati doesn't vote for Yul, and I think that Parvati ultimately doesn't vote for Yul just because she was so annoyed by Yul and just probably had a better working relationship with Ozzy. I mean, they're closer in age, they're young.
The hot tub.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? The humpback whale or
whatever? You want to see a humpback whale?
Go in that hot tub, but
yeah. But I think that's why Adam did it. Candace is one of the most interesting players to me, because I feel like when she got cast on Heroes versus Villains, people said, what? Why? How did that happen? And then you watch the season back and you're like, why did it take them until Heroes versus Villains to put her back on the show? Mm-hmm. She's all over the place. She's an absolute mess. And in a season with 20 people, where I think only 3 people get good edits, and I'm talking Yul, Ozzy, Penner, that's really it. Like, Candace is the next best edit. Candace outshines Parvati. I don't care what anybody says. And I got
I agree.
I'm gonna save my statement for later about Parvati. I'm really excited, but I feel like Candace is great, but still we don't get into her head because they can't figure out a way to get us into the heads of all these people. When there's 20, there's just too many with too short of time and too much going on. So yeah, I don't know why Candace actually does vote for Yul. But I also don't feel like Ozzy played a very good social game.
And he did not, and that's Ozzy's storyline through 4 seasons. Ozzy can't. Go ahead, McKenna.
I was just gonna say that the only reason why Ozzy is at Final Tribal Council is 1, they couldn't get rid of him in the merge portion, and 2, like they needed his vote since the mutiny because he was going to be next. He was like on the dead bottom of that tribe.
Oh, and it's crazy that everyone's, attacking Becky for the coattail riding. And like I think John brought this up during Pearl Islands that, that's just an overplayed. And I do agree that, hey, we work together. When Becky says we did work together, I do believe that that's the case. And it seems like years later that is still the case.
For Becky.
But Ozzy, I feel like rode the coattails of the idol hanging over everyone. Yes, he was winning challenges and all that. But I don't think that he was ever going to be in any type of jeopardy in the challenges that he didn't win, which obviously
There's
because
only 1.
Yeah, I think Adam won 1 or 2.
1 challenge, that's it. Yeah, just 1.
1. Okay. Yeah, Phil, go ahead.
And what I was going to say, and I think that's a great point, Drew, is so many people try to discredit Yul's win because he had the idol. And the only time that the idol was stupid was at Final 4. The fact that he could use it through Final 4, so he could literally never be voted out of the game the way he was, like whatever. But I do feel like when it comes to Ozzy, people don't realize that if Yul goes, if that idol's not there, Ozzy goes too. And if Ozzy sits at the final 3 with any of the Adam, Parvati, Brad, Rebecca, any of them, he's going to lose because this was a very cliquey cast. This was a cast that was going to vote for who they liked more. And if anybody from that Raro alliance, other than Jonathan sits at final 3, they probably beat everyone. And I don't think people really understand that. So if Yul goes, Ozzy goes. And I know Ozzy won all the challenges, but when Adam won it, Ozzy would have just gone home there.
Yeah.
Ozzy was a part of the 3, the cowboy flicka group that showed up to Raro, and they straight up say, hey, these are the 3 people we least want to see. It's like, Ozzy's not from the very beginning, and we can start touching on the beginning of the season, the race war aspect of it. Ozzy gets a lot of negative content the first couple of episodes. Like, he's shown as a provider and everything, but like throwing the challenge because Billy doesn't do certain things around camp. He does come off as entitled, like what Penner says during Final Tribal. When they do, what vote was it that he came back and was pouting about? I don't remember who they had gotten rid of at that point, but they get back to camp and Ozzy, once again, and this is something that Ozzy does many times throughout his career, is when things don't go his way, he'll just sit there and get
Cecilia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ozzy just pouts around camp. And it's like, dude, get over it. And he does this again in South Pacific, which is, like 2 weeks away. And he in Micronesia, he sits there and pouts at everyone's face while he sits on the jury and gives his stupid speech, which we'll talk about in a couple of days. The race war aspect. Obviously, I'm going to assume I know both of y'all's answer to this, but do you think their hearts were in the right place?
Can I just, here, I was thinking about this because I'm like, all right, I'm going to go on a podcast. I try to avoid like these types of conversations as much as possible on the podcast. But I was like, man, I'm going on. I'm talking about Cook Islands. You got to do it. This is what it is. And what makes me laugh morbidly is that in 2006, they were told, hey, Guatemala had it was all white people. Every single person was white. And then you come out and you do Panama and you have Sari who goes really far. And it's like, see, if you start casting, BIPOC players, now all of a sudden they can go further. And what Survivor's response to that was, and this is where my brain went yesterday or this morning or whatever, it was their response to you need to have more diversity was, okay, we'll do diversity and we'll segregate them. And we're going to use segregation to determine that that's good. Because, you know, what's always worked for diversity is to segregate based along racial lines. And as I saw,
then pit them all against each other.
And then, and thank God, I literally said this to my wife earlier. Thank God they did not put the haves versus have-nots twist in season 13, and they waited till Fiji. Because no matter how they would have broke that
Which
out,
was
they were
also supposed to be race war.
Exactly. If they were breaking this up by race, and one race was going to get, or two races, because there were 4, obviously, we're going to get all of this, and the other 4 were going to get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So they got lucky that at least they did that. But yeah, that's what I thought of this morning. I'm like, they literally went there. So do I think their hearts are in the right places? Yeah. But I think ultimately you had a bunch of people who were sitting around that room just saying, that's a great idea, not thinking about what they were actually about to do.
Well, and the funny part, go ahead, McKenna.
I think also it's like, all right, so we just did by age and gender. Now what else do we do?
We have left.
And it's obviously the next option is race.
What I was going to say is when they swap, Jeff uses the word integrate, and I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
And
This is not...
was it Flicka who says it? I think it was Flicka who says the sister on the end and stuff like that. And I'm like,
yes. I tweeted about that earlier. I'm like, man, Flicka would be so cute if she didn't say Flicka and had dreads as a white person. But like, whatever. Like, I'll get over it.
And I feel like by segregating the tribes, as I'm going to keep saying here,
Mm-hmm.
you open it up to people being like, oh, we're on the black tribe. So now I'm going to talk to you the way that I would stereotypically think that black people interact with each other. And that's what happens. And it's crazy. And you do see, I mean, really, it is funny that at the end of the day, an Asian wins this season because Yule and the rest of the Asian tribe were the ones who seemed the most concerned about how they were going to be perceived.
Yule
it seemed like
almost
the others
quit.
were leaning in.
Yule almost quit, like right on the spot, once he found out it was divided by race.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating experiment, and for what it is, and I'm thankfully they get rid of it after the second boot. For what it is, I do think that a lot of the conversations that we see people have, like, hey, we've got to represent for black folks and everything, and it's funny because during the first challenge, they kept saying, like, yeah, well, the stereotype is we can't swim, so, like, I guess.
We get that in Samoa, too, when you get...
But thankfully, Jason could actually swim, so it worked. And so as we swap, yes, we have the Billy Candace thing. I don't want to really touch on it because everyone touches on it. The Billy Candace thing is a lot of fun. We swap, and I think one thing that people forget about this season is it's not like I2 was like some shit tribe. I2 wins most of the challenges before Candace and Penner leave. So once that happens, I would still say that I2 is in, they have momentum because they keep winning anyway. They've had to vote out 2 people, and one of them was because both tribes went to tribal. And then from there, they don't lose another challenge. So I understand we have to paint them as the underdogs, but are they really underdogs?
They're only underdogs because Jonathan and Candace stepped off to make it 8-4. If it's not 8-4, they're not underdogs at all. I mean, they have 2 of the most dominant players in the history of the show. Yule's incredible. I don't care about the idol thing, and like I'll defend Yule's win till the day I die. I think it's huge. But then they have Ozzy, who's great at the other portion. And honestly, like, okay, Becky is kind of a snooze. Sorry, she's boring. But Sandra plays. Like Sandra plays games. She just can't make a damn fire. She runs out of matches, but she plays the game and she plays hard. And I think like there is something to be said for how hard they all played and how they all came together on a season. And it is funny and it is fitting that then a cast of 1 Hispanic, 2 Asian, and 1 from the African-American tribe all go to the final 4 and they systematically eliminate
the white folk. When you were talking earlier about, thank God something, I thought you were going to go with, thank God a white person didn't win this season, which is true. Like, I mean, I don't think I would have been upset. I don't think that people would have actually been upset about that. But the optics wouldn't have looked great if they had done this and Whitey wins. What's crazy, and Phil, I think you were the one who brought it up earlier, there is a chance that Adam could win this season. There is a chance that Candace could win this season. Parvati, okay, yes. Penner, probably not. But with those three, the three that come off, outside of Ozzy as the most spoiled this season, especially Adam, I could not vibe with Adam at all. And sitting here watching, it's like, wow, Adam could actually win in a different type of situation. Do you think that the white do you think that Rero was more portrayed that way, or do you actually think that that's how they were out there? Either one you can answer.
They're villains. Every single person from that tribe is a villain. Every single person. I'm talking about from the starting white tribe. I also like that, like they try to go like Caucasian, Hispanic American. Like they're really trying to be like PC with it while also not being PC at all. But I feel like you look at that. Jonathan Penner played again. He's a villain. Everybody knows that. Parvati literally plays on the villain's tribe.
Candace is a hero, though.
Candace is a hero who betrays the heroes like the villain she always was. And then you have Adam, who, I mean, is downright rude and disrespectful to so many people on the season. Really, the only one who's not a villain is Flicka. But then again, maybe she is a villain. I mean, who knows?
She said sister, so I mean, if she has dreads. No, I like Flicka.
Earlier, she did say sister. She did.
Flicka she's fine. To answer this question, I feel like because seasons 41 through 46 had the 50% BIPOC initiative, and I think the only time that race has really been brought up outside of the Marianne tribal from 42 was in 41, where they tried to make the Survivor version of the cookout. Didn't last past like an episode, but I don't feel like race has really, in the seasons that we have had more diverse casts. Even David versus Goliath and David versus Goliath all the way through Isle of the Idols, they all have pretty diverse casts, and that's not really a storyline with them. So I do feel like if you mix it up, and we get it in Fiji, if you mix it up, even though the final three are, all black, spoilers.
Don't listen.
I don't think that the race thing would have been an issue. And I still don't think that it was that prevalent on what we got in the edit this season. Does anyone disagree?
I think what's silly about it is, so think about this, right? We know that now there's been the diversity initiative so that 41 to 46 have to have 50%. Have to. There's no question about have to. Did anybody have a conversation about the fact that the final four of 46 are all white people? No, because that's not why they made it to the final four. It's not what happened. And I think what makes Cook Islands dangerous compared to a season like Fiji, where, Fiji, they might have been trying to do the same thing, but they didn't do the same thing, is you're putting out a lot of diverse cast members, but you're literally saying, now we want you to go against each other, and we are immediately telling you, here's your difference, here's your difference, here's your difference.
You're pointing it out.
It's as surface level, skin level as it can possibly be. But when you don't address it in that way, and you let it play out, I mean, we see it happen all the time where, like I said, this last season, nobody was sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe Ben, Charlie, Liz, and Kenzie all teamed up because they're white people. Like, that's not why they did. But if they had started on a tribe of white people, it sure would have felt like what happened with the Reros in this season.
I also feel like Parvati was, once they combined into the full tribe, swapped into the full Rero tribe, she was getting along with Nate, she was getting along with Jenny, she was getting along with people who were not her starting tribe, because Candace was over on the other side, Jonathan was on the other side, Flicka was on the other side, and who does she have? Adam. I mean, she's gonna flirt with him, but that doesn't get her anywhere because Candace was his main
that was her squeeze. Yeah.
So I think she's really connecting with a lot of other people once the swap happened. So I feel like they are limiting the castaways as well with having them put in their, same walks of life, right?
Yeah, and with the Asian tribe, they do actually sit there and talk about their actual differences, which I thought was really cool. What I wanted to touch on Parvati was, and this is probably not PC, but whatever. The fact that in this season and in Micronesia, she's a little bit of a chocolate chaser, which was, I totally forgot about her and Nate this season. So and I know, everything with James. Yeah, I mean, I don't like to talk about this kind of stuff either, but it is Cook Island. So, Candace, McKenna asked you a similar question yesterday about why Danielle was a villain and not a hero. Candace, do we feel like Candace was, whatever they try to tell us, fine. Do we feel like Candace was a hero because of all of her emotional confessionals while she is at exile? Do we feel like it's because she was very strong with her OG tribe? What, just y'all's perception, why is Candace a hero?
So Candace is such an enigma to me in Survivor because I feel this was actually a question I asked like 100 years ago on a Q&A for you and Alexa, Phil. But it's like, why does Candace always get such like a raw deal in Survivor? Like in Heroes versus Villains, Parvati acts like she doesn't know her and the real connection is Amanda. Granted, they get to the final two together, but like she played basically the entire time with Candace and Cook Islands, and then she gets shafted in Blood versus Water because she wasn't in the pregame alliance. And so it just feels like she gets painted as such this evil person. But I think in Cook Islands, she was just trying to take the game into her own hands. She didn't feel comfortable on I2, and she stepped off not knowing Jonathan was going to follow her, but like her two number one allies, and Adam and Parvati, were over on Raro. So she took the opportunity to advance her game, hopefully for the better, but I too felt incredibly burned by just specifically Candace, pretty much.
I think she is a hero from the standpoint of, look, Jeff's reasonings for why Danielle's a villain and why Candace is a hero actually do make sense. Danielle goes to the final four. Terry helps her make fire, says, if you win immunity, you got to take me to the end. She wins immunity and then takes Aris. Like, that makes you a villain because you would have went out at 4, and then Sari, who's the ultimate hero, probably wins the game. So yeah, we're not happy with you. But then when you look at Candace, she suffers this season, and it's funny. I mean, I laugh every time they send her because she is so full of herself coming out there, and she gets a nice little wake-up call, but she suffers for the people that she's loyal to. And it's the same thing as Russell Hantz as a villain, because Russell Hantz obviously in the real world is Russell Hantz, but also like Russell Hantz is Russell Hantz, right? You see him burning socks, see him dumping water, all that. But if you're in Russell Hantz's alliance, you go to the end. It happened twice. We saw that happen. And I think Candace kind of falls into that, where obviously she's not doing anything egregious to make it so that she's a villain, but she kind of bullies Jonathan throughout this season. Like, her and Jonathan don't get along, and half the time I'm sitting there going, man, Candace is kind of being the one who's harder on Jonathan than Jonathan is on her. So that's just my take for all of that. I feel like Candace, it makes sense that she was thrown on the hero tribe, even though personally I think she's a villain.
Yeah, I think and I do agree that my favorite of the 4 times she goes to exile is obviously during the auction, because they're trying to combine money, and soon as Becky gets up there, Candace, the cut to Yule's face, one of the favorite gifts, and she loses all of her money, and she knows at this point, and she has a confessional where she's talking about like these people that I want to be friends with, but they just keep sending me here. It's like, yeah, Candace, I do feel like, yes, you want to be friends with these people. Ozzy has shown that he's a very bitter person. Yule, Becky, and Sandra, like, even if they are fine with you, they still feel at least a tad burned because y'all were on this winning streak. You guys were winning. You didn't have to jump, I guess. Yeah. But I also understand that, hey, if my 2 biggest allies are over there, more than likely I will be safe if I jump ship. I'm not going to jump into a situation where I'm on the bottom. Penner made the crazier move of also jumping because he didn't have that same.
He was good with Yule.
Yeah, he didn't have that same implied safety net that Candace did. Like, Candace knows that these people are here. He has a deal with Candace, but he doesn't know where he falls in that pecking order. And he's able to play his way from the actual bottom of that when they jump ship. I love Penner this season. I forgot how much I enjoyed Penner this season. I used to, like, the first time I watched it, I hated his guts because I was a stupid, 13-year-old or something.
Same.
Yeah. I was
13, but I still,
I don't know.
I'm watching, like, you don't get to appreciate who Penner is until you like watch him a little bit.
You also have to kind of be older, I feel like, because the things he's grumpy about start to make more sense. Older and older. Because like when they're calling him a rat, when they're calling him whatever, they're playing the game and they're playing the game hard, and I respect it. But also, like, Penner didn't do anything that egregious this season. Yeah, he had to flip back and forth. Though, I mean, I think Penner plays an unbelievable game for how early he should have went out. But he makes the biggest mistake of the season, which is teaming up with Yule. And again, where Yule doesn't necessarily get the credit anymore because people want to say, oh, he only won because of his idol. Penner, he had to convince Penner to come with him. If he doesn't do that, it's a 5-4 vote. Even if Yule plays his idol, next tribal council, it's 4-4. Ozzy might flip in that situation. There's a good chance that could happen. And Nate goes home there no matter what, but there is a chance. So Penner is kind of like, he's the cog in the wheel the entire time. He's the spoon that's stirring everything, where he's constantly making mistakes, good plays, bad plays, good plays, bad plays. To me, his best game ever is Micronesia, and obviously he gets injured, so there's nothing that you can do. I personally think he could have won Micronesia. I say this all the time, and people think I'm crazy, but I really think he's set up to win Micronesia.
Goodness, he didn't.
Yeah, I know, and we'll talk about it again. Okay, can I say this real quick, Drew? Yeah. And we'll just see how everybody feels. Here's how I feel after watching Cook Islands. You can't be a top 5 player in Survivor history if you lose to Adam Gentry the first time you play. That's how I feel about Parvati. I'm sorry. She lost to Adam Gentry.
Yeah, and not because he had immunity. Yeah, not because he had immunity either. So Adam sucks.
Here's the deal, okay?
Arguably, she's more threatening than Adam, though.
No. Parvati, the thing is with Parvati, I love her game in Micro. I still think it's Cerie's game. I think people overrate her game in Heroes versus Villains because they want to keep elevating Parvati. We need to be like, no, it's the greatest game I've ever seen. It's like, clearly it's not. And also, like, let's give Russell credit for giving her one of the 2 idols. Like, let's not forget that happened. And I just think that her first game, like, if you sit down and watch that season and you say to people who don't know anything about Survivor, who's the most iconic? One of the people from this season is a top 5 most iconic players in the history of the show. They are never going to say Parvati, ever. They're never going to do it. And I just think every time I watch Cook Islands, the one thing I will say about her is, man, she's good in the challenges. She's way better in the challenges than she gets credit for. That's the one thing people underrate her on, is because she's like the strongest woman on the tribe. She's participating in every challenge, doing the physical parts. But anyway, I don't even know how I got here. I just wanted to make sure I said this to McKenna that you cannot be.
Parvati's overrated. Okay. No. Like, McKenna, go, because I do agree with Phil, and I do want to touch on that.
She probably is, but in a list of ranking every Survivor player ever between 4 people combined, and one of them is John, so you can yell at him if you need to. We have Parvati ranked 3rd in out of 40 seasons. It's 1 to Winners at War. We have her ranked at 3rd. So between 4 people, I don't know. I'm not the only one pushing Parvati here.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I did my 40 seasons thing for Russell, I had her at number 5. I'd probably move her behind Tom for sure now, but yeah.
Parvati is a. I won't sit here and say that she's not an all-timer, because like she is, like, just even character-wise, she is. I do feel like what Phil said is true. Of if you look at her 3 games, not including Winners at War, we won't touch on that. If you look at Cook Islands, yes, she goes before Adam, who sucks. You go to Micronesia, where everyone is saying, oh, yeah, Parvati's the one that got Eric to give up necklace. It's like, well, that's not how I remember it. I think it was more Natalie Bolton and Cirie more than anyone else, but maybe I'm wrong.
Final Tribal Council.
Yeah, and if Ozzy doesn't suck and give the worst speech ever, and if Amanda doesn't pout her way through Final Tribal, there is a chance that Parvati doesn't even win that one. And then, yes, Heroes versus Villains is probably her best of her 3 pre-Winners at War seasons. But I don't think that it was like, I don't think it's, they put it on this pedestal of like the ultimate robbed goddess that's ever existed. It's like, no, that's not true. She latched, she was, I won't say latched on because I don't like wrestling, but she was aligned with someone who everyone hated But there was also another option here. And I feel like even if Jerry sits at the end, Jerry probably wins. I know we're jumping the gun by like a week, but like, what's up?
Because they're the other of
they're
like
the other. Yes.
It had to be Danielle for any of them.
I was going to say, Parvati doesn't win in a single iteration of the final 6 of Heroes versus Villains because Rupert and Colby both beat her too because there's so many heroes over there. Well, here's my question, because I do think, like, look, I understand that from a real life person who they are. I understand why people like Parvati so much as compared to Russell and stuff like that. How do you feel, though, about considering somebody to be one of the greatest players of all time when they lost at a final tribal council? No, I'm being sincere in this because this is something I was thinking about.
I thought you were going to say lost to Adam.
I thought we were going to go back to Adam here.
Lost at a final tribal council, because even though she's won a season, she has lost at a final tribal council. She has gotten there and she has not been able to pull out the votes. And I know she did that against Sandra, but Sandra and her were both on same playing field coming into that season. They were both one-time winners. So I just am very curious how others feel about that, because if you lose to somebody else at a final tribal, that means that like the jury just said that they were better than you. It's just also, a weird situation.
You could spin that of she did lose at the final tribal council, but how in the Sam heck did she get her way? Like, how was she able to get her way there? Which is like another level of like, all right, she got her way there somehow. I mean, idols, yes, were part of the game, but she had to find them / have her social game. Anyway, this is not Heroes versus Villains.
Hold on. You also have to, like, you said Sam Heck. Like, that's...
Yeah, you did say Sam.
I don't know where that came from, but yes, we're not talking about Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess
it was funny because when I was doing the first 7 seasons, I would always end up going on an All-Stars tangent. So now that, Heroes versus Villains... Villains. And it's funny that we're not talking about Micro that much, but Parvati 1.0, I think she plays her role well. I think that we know her game, and it's more than just the flirting thing. Like, she is trying to find her way in with things. And yes, she has the physical thing going for her. I do think that Candace is probably, yes, a more shown character this season, whatever word you want to use. Candace has more of a story arc this season. That's, I guess, that's where I'm going with. But I think that ultimately, because, and this, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, I thought going into this time that it was going to have the Palau effect of like, I'm just not going to care about the I-2-4 this time because I've seen it happen already. And I was really invested again. And it was fun watching the dominoes fall to get them to that point where it's every episode is like, oh, is someone going to flip on the other? And it's like, nope, they're sticking true to it. And Ozzy, and the great strategist that Ozzy is, I don't want to send one home. It's like, why? Like, I don't understand why you won't just, you are basically doing that anyway by voting Becky. All Yul has to do is also do it, which he's never going to. I do think that this is, between this and Game Changers is my favorite version of Ozzy. Game Changers because he doesn't outstay his welcome. He just he's kind of there. And here, because he gets more of a positive edit than he does on Micro and South Pacific. His final speech, though, I just kept laughing because like this all comes off as corny, only because I've seen his Micro speech and his Redemption Island speech in South Pacific. It's like this seems like the same type of acting.
He's taken a turn for sure.
For sure.
To the point where at this, everybody's saying, oh, he's the young guy who, like, he's trying to do what he can and good head on his shoulders, all of that stuff. And now it's like, okay, not so much anymore. I don't care about his personal life, but, he's probably never going to play Survivor again. Let's be real, everybody.
Well, because right after this, he goes and films his other reality show that he did. And did we not know about this? Okay, never mind.
I don't.
Okay, the reality show he's filming now, that's for sure.
Oh, I know what he's filming now. Ozzy was on Foursome on Playboy TV like right after this because he goes on and at one point he's like, I just got a trip or whatever overseas, and I'm like, oh, that's it. I have seen the episode because Ozzy was on it, so like I'm just putting that out there.
Wow.
As we start to wrap up, Ozzy was on it. I had to watch it.
Can I just throw something out there? I know you were about to say as we're
Oh, no.
wrapping up, but we haven't talked at all about Nate and how has Nate not played again? Because
so that's the wrapping out portion is going to get to that.
Okay, good. Because I'm sorry to jump on you. I just
Oh,
wanted
God,
to make sure
no.
we did not skip over the fact that
No,
Nate
so the first question I always ask is, of the people that we have gotten back from this season, which would be Parvati, Yule, Penner, Candace, and is that it?
Parvati, Yule, Penner, Candace, Parvati, Yule, Penner, Candace, Ozzy. You didn't say Ozzy.
And Ozzy.
One quarter of the cast.
Are they the right 5? Should there have been more? You can start because we already know.
There's 2 people who should have played again other than those 5. There was just really nowhere to fit them. It's Nate and it's Cowboy. Cowboy is one of the best casting decisions of the first 46 seasons of Survivor. Okay. Like that man being cast on this show is unbelievable. And I'm going to be honest with you. The success of him is why Yao Man plays season 14. If Cowboy wasn't a hit, because remember, if you watch actually the reunion, it's interesting because you see at the Cook Islands reunion, they've already filmed Fiji. They're talking about the car situation at the Cook Islands reunion. So they had obviously already filmed this before they saw Cowboy on TV, but the production team knew Cowboy was a star. And I do think that then they said, we got to get another person like him. So they go with the more serious version, which is Yao Man. That being said, Plan Voodoo is absolutely incredible. It's absolutely mind-blowing. The story behind it, everything. I have chills talking about it. Like when he comes up with Plan Voodoo, it's incredible. When that tribe swap happens and it's Penner, Yule, Ozzy, and Cowboy as the 4 men on the one tribe, I sat there and I was like, oh my God, I never really realized this was the group of 4, but that might be the greatest 4 men ever on one tribe in the history of Survivor. And then you have Nate. And I think Nate, look, pre-mergers have a hard time coming back. And especially now Cowboy's like 60 something. It's a little bit different. Nate, though, he is phenomenal TV. We had never heard confessionals quite like what he was giving during this season. He's much more off the cuff. He's much less polished purposefully. He's still very good at what he's doing, but he's talking the way he would talk to his friends while he's talking to a camera person. It's amazing. He's good at the game. He understands what's going on. And to me, he outshines everybody on this season from a confessional perspective, maybe with the exception of Penner. Because Penner, I think Penner has more confessionals in one episode than Brad and Jenny or Brad and Rebecca combined. He has more in one episode than they have combined. I think Nate and Penner are the 2 biggest stars. Ozzy, I get it because he wins all the immunities. I would have rather seen Terry on Micronesia. No doubt about it. I would have rather seen Terry as the dominant challenge beast on Micronesia instead of Ozzy. Yule, he's good at the game. He's not necessarily the greatest TV, even though I find him to be compelling. And Parvati and Candace, I think, played again just because I do think that there was a smaller pool of who Survivor was willing to pull from for the women from this era. Mm-hmm. So for me, Nate is I have no idea. People talk about Sean Rector. It might be Nate who is the biggest question mark to me because Nate is non-controversial. Sean is a little controversial.
Well, there was a Cook Islands person supposed to return for Blood versus Water, and it was Christina Coria, someone who like nobody really asked to come back, which I'm surprised that she was in the running, but it's because she was dating an actor of some kind at the time. I don't know who it was, but like she was almost back, which I find crazy that like Nate wasn't the option or like anybody else. Like, so exactly. The only way I can get you to know Christina is she was fighting with Ozzy, and Ozzy was like, I'm 20 years younger than her, and so she doesn't like being bossed around by a 20-year-old.
Yeah, she got shot. That's pretty much what I know.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, yeah, Stephanie Favor would be the answer.
Yeah, honestly, Stephanie's way better. Rachel was bummed when Stephanie got voted out. She thought Stephanie was going deep. Yeah, she thought Stephanie was going deep.
I agree that Cowboy. I would say Cowboy and Nate, but Cowboy, even outside of Plan Voodoo, which is it changed the game, even though it didn't actually, they didn't actually do it this season. The fact that him and Yule are sitting there and he clocks immediately, the white people are going to get back together when you guys merge. Like that's what's going to happen. We need to deal with this now because because it came to me in a dream or whatever. Like this is what's going to happen. I think that was so. We didn't really hear that from everybody else. It was Cowboy saying, "Hey, they're going to get back together," and then the next episode is when Candace and Penner jump ship. But Nate, you brought up Sean Rector, and that's the person I kind of had in my head watching it this time. It's like, yeah, this is getting, outside of, obvious skin similarities. I feel like both of them were their genuine selves on the show. They weren't trying to play to the camera as a character. They were trying to play to the camera as this is who I am. And I do feel like, going to the second part of how we wrap this up of, hey, anyone pre-33 from this season that you would like to see on 50, who would that person be? If anyone, and it could be anyone that's even returned already, but is there anyone?
I mean, Nate is the answer from Cook Islands. I don't think we need a Penner return. I don't think we need a Yule return. I don't think we need a Parvati return. Or, maybe Candace, because maybe
no,
she
please no, no, I don't. No more Candace.
I really don't think Cook Islands needs a returnee in 50.
If it was going to be anybody, I'd probably go Penner, especially with what happened with his wife with the ALS and all of that. I feel like Penner has a completely different story now. I feel like he was the cocky, confident dad, and I feel like now he's a different guy. I feel like you go through something like that, you're going to come out a different person. And I think he's always going to give great confessionals. Mm-hmm. If I was casting a Survivor season, Penner's one of the first people I'm going to. I think he's just one of the great confessional givers in the history of the show. Nate's such a stretch. I mean, I love Nate, but for 50, I can't see him coming back for 50 if he never came back before that. It would have to, if they're going to do it, it would be Sean or potentially Earl.
One last note on Penner. I love that Cook Islands is like a nice time capsule for him to have, because his wife is his loved one.
Oh my gosh, that actually got me today. Like,
so it's a really amazing moment that they can have together, because she is mobile. She's like comes out on the island, hugs him. That whole. So it's great for him to see and always be able to look back on like a fond moment with him and his wife.
Yeah. That I'm dead ass. I lost it when that happened, because I just totally forgot, that he even gets a family visit in this season. Mm-hmm. We're moving on to Fiji. We're going to Race Wars Part 2 ish. A season that I feel like is wrongfully shit on. Like I don't have it anywhere near my top or anything, but like I'm excited to watch Fiji this time around. Just for some of the other storylines outside of, you remember that time that Yawman in Dreams with the truck. Final thoughts on Cook Islands before I give my rating.
I love it. It's one of those comfort seasons for me where I'm like, what season do I want to watch? I want to go old school. You know what? Let's throw on Cook Islands. I have it ranked at 10 in my ranking through 25. So it's like middle-ish of the pack.
Cook Islands is bad, and then it's good. And like, honestly, it's bad, and then it's great. And I think that's the hardest part about this. And you were talking about Palau. I always used to love Palau. I have Palau ranked right behind Cook Islands, because I think they are two storylines that don't necessarily get better the more you watch them. They do get a little bit worse, because it's just like, okay, we're watching it. There's nothing spicy happening from what us Survivor fans like at this point. You could tell with 20 people. I know Palau had 20 people. 3 of them go home in the first hour of that show. And so Survivor didn't know what to do with 20 people. I think personally, Rebecca might be the worst casting choice ever for the show.
She was so
So good.
she doesn't know what's going on ever. They have the moment where Harvey's like teaching her how to like at camp. Just
So funny though, when she's like dying in that one challenge, and
Yeah.
it's just like, I can't do anything.
Yeah. And like, you know, I don't like to say that kind of stuff like with the community because you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to run into. And like you say things and then you meet the people and you really like them and stuff. But I doubt I'm ever going to meet Rebecca. And like, honestly, when I was watching it this time, I think she gets 3 confessionals in the first episode and then she gets 3 more the rest of the season. And she's there until final 11 or whatever.
actor.
Yeah, she wasn't fun. There's a lot of duds on the cast. And maybe they're not even duds, but from an editing perspective, because there were too many people, they didn't know how to edit it. And it really shows. And you get a lot of strong personalities. And that's why a quarter of this cast is played again. And we can make arguments for Cowboy and Nate. But the other 13 people who haven't played again, I just throw my hands up. And I think that's the problem with the season. And if it wasn't for the mutiny, this is down there with Thailand. But the mutiny makes this go way up. And it puts it into at least the mid-tier of Survivor.
And I'm glad you brought up Thailand. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. So I'm going to put it right behind Panama and right in front of Africa right now through 13 seasons. You bring up Thailand. This is, I mean, going off the definition of the word pagonging, this is the 3rd pagonging that we have gotten since the beginning of the show. We've got Borneo, Thailand in here, and I feel like people don't really think of this as a pagonging, but it very much is, but it's not boring like Thailand was. It's not, you know, we're actually rooting for these people to get rid of these folks. So I feel like that was a fun little thing, that the fact that, you know, this was actually a pagonging. Phil, McKenna, anything going on for y'all in the next few days, weeks?
Oh yeah. Phil, if you want to go first.
Yeah, so we just did the Traders season 3 cast breakdown. Will and I jumped in and did that. I put out an Australian Survivor Patreon preview today. Our top 2 tiers of patrons are going to be getting Australian Survivor coverage every Friday from here until probably the day I die, because there are just so many episodes of Australian Survivor. You want to impress me, Coach Drew? Do
Australian Survivor.
8 days of Australian Survivor. I don't even know if you could fit it in that time. But yeah, and then, so if you're interested in Australian Survivor, patreon.com/a specialist. And then we have a Ben Katzman tell-all coming out on Sunday night, 9 p.m. Could release it now, but we're going to wait till 9 p.m. Sunday, try to make it a little prime time. And so tune in for that one. That's going to be releasing on our YouTube and on, you know, Spotify, iTunes, all of that fun stuff. I call it iTunes, but it's Apple. It's Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast, yeah.
I'm old.
And then for me, over on the specialist, I will be recapping Big Brother with Blake, who is also on the channel all summer long. So if you are craving some Big Brother content, that will be over on the specialist as well. We're not just Survivor anymore.
Not anymore.
Like I mentioned yesterday, I'm a patron. I think that they've one of 2 things that I actually subscribe to Patreon-wise. So, like, please give them a follow. Phil, McKenna, thank you so much. We're going to have McKenna back in 2 weeks, 1 week. Redemption Island. So, like, 2 weeks-ish.
We needed a filler, and I was like, I'll talk Redemption Island.
And hopefully we can get Phil back before this all is said and done. Thank you both so much. Thank you for everyone in the chat, and we will see you after Fiji and see you on the other side.